Okay, by now I feel like you should have a good understanding of my general thoughts on the Olympics. My favorite part of the summer and winter when the time comes. If you're new, you got homework, but trust me, it's insanely easy, although I apologize in advance. The last time we talked about the Olympics, I almost got my head chopped off by an alligator. That mainly explains the eye when I escaped, but enough trauma dumping. Let's go back to 2013. A very underrated and memorable year for me because it's really funny to look back at it now that I have a developed brain. Insanely fun year for music until Blurred Lines released and Miley Cyrus lost her goddamn mind. Disney was on top of the world yet again, and it was a good thing at the time. Someone take me back. A great year for movies. Vine was the future of short form content in a positive way, and without a doubt the best of what we have now. But 2013 was when video games started to evolve yet again, mainly because this was the year the PlayStation 4 made its grand debut and became a top 5 selling console of all time. But overall, a damn good year for gaming. GTA 5 plus Online, Tomb Raider, Warframe, Neverwinter, Assassin's Creed Black Flag, Payday 2, Shin Megami Tensei 4, Bioshock Infinite, Papers, Please, Risk of Rain, just to name a few. NBA 2K was still really good, the Madden downfall was on its way, WWE 2K would release its last good game for a while, and MLB The Show took over as the new yearly baseball game. So sports games weren't the bane of everyone's existence yet, although there were some games that probably should have been cancelled, like some games today that get announced prematurely. Epic Mickey 2, Injustice, Disney Infinity, Skylander, SWAT Force, Rise of Hell Retribution, although it was one hell of a year for mobile games as well. I learned a lot from this. To my surprise, Flappy Bird and Geometry Dash released this year. Flappy Bird to me feels like one of the first big mobile games to release alongside Angry Birds back in 2009, but I was very wrong. I think that alligator attack is getting to me. This year of mobile games also gives us 2 of the 5 best Endless Runner games in Temple Run 2 and Sonic Dash. I still play both to this day. We also got My Talking Tom, another game I had a feeling released a lot earlier than I initially thought. To think this led to this. We've come a long way, but let's pivot over to Nintendo and what they did for 2013. I feel like it's only right to give them the spotlight here. By the time the new year started, the Wii U was 2 months out and people were either super excited or insanely confused. It's still the first year of the Wii U's lifespan, and the 3DS is doing very well for itself. But Nintendo made a decision that would come back to bite them in the ass. On Valentine's Day of 2013, the year of Luigi became a thing. On paper, I believe this is a great idea, and as a fan of Luigi, this is very exciting, giving him the spotlight he deserves, getting out of Mario's shadow after all these years. Would you believe me if I said it was insanely disappointing? We would get Dream Team, Dark Moon, New Super Luigi U, and expansion to New Super Mario Bros. U, and Dr. Luigi. Funny enough, this game was the very last game to be released in 2013. What a way to end a year. The Wii U is definitely a console of all time. Nintendo gave us their take on a sequel home console. They haven't done that since the SNES. Now don't get me wrong, the Wii U has a lot of great games, but at the cost of being on the Wii U to begin with. I believe this is the reason why Nintendo brought back a lot of those games onto the Switch, so they could attempt to repent for their sins, and it sorta kinda worked. But let's make our way over to November of 2013. Funny enough, I can't find any information for the general rollout of this game other than 3 trailers. Nothing specific as usual, but it's time for the next installment of the Mario and Sonic franchise on home consoles. Shout out to the IOC for doing the Lord's work yet again. Mario and Sonic at the Olympic Winter Games Sochi 2014 released surprisingly first in Europe on November 8th, 2013, the next day in Australia, November 15th in North America, and finally December 5th, 2013 in Japan. I'll be honest, I think Japan is starting to lose hope for this series. I really wish there was more documented about this game, more so its general rollout, but it feels like they just wanted to get it over with, and so here we are now. Although little did we know at the time, this would be the final Winter Olympic installment of the franchise, so hopefully it goes out with a bang. Although the official title is annoying to say, so I'm just gonna say it my way. This is Mario and Sonic at the Sochi 2014 Winter Olympic Games. To think, we're off to a really bad start, because I have terrible news. Not only is there no opening cutscene, but I cannot defend the lack of new characters anymore. This is going to be our roster moving forward, and that sucks. I can't stress how great this roster can be at times. There are so many more characters from both franchises that should be playable, and I think it should have started with this game or 2012. I don't understand the constant hesitation to add on to this roster. It doesn't have to be Smash Bros levels of big, but let's see some new faces. Although one thing I've noticed is that a lot of the NPC characters we've seen throughout Vancouver and mainly London could possibly be playable. Why are we sticking them in these roles when we can use the mascot mascot of that year's Olympics to play those roles. Not only is the potential being wasted, but we're not giving the mascots of said Olympics the recognition they deserve. But on a more positive note, you know how characters have their stats that match their archetype in this game? Well, whenever you choose an event to play, you explicitly see the attributes of that sport you're playing and where certain characters thrive. I love this small detail because it gives you a better idea of where each character shines the most. Now let's see if the events themselves can restore a little bit of hope. I have a bone to pick with our selection of events. First things first, 2010 had 32 events to choose from. 16 Olympic, 16 Dream. Welcome to Sochi. Did someone say 24 events? Also known as less events. What a shame. 16 Olympic events and 8 Dream events. Let's give these events a fair shot and hope we come out of this with some positivity on the quality, because that's mainly what matters. A lot of the returning events got gameplay overhauls, so there's a distinct difference in general gameplay for some of these sports. Starting with the Olympic events, continuing the trend of random order, let's go dance on ice and get roses thrown at us. Figure skating singles is exactly what you think. You're performing a solo routine, highest score wins, but the gameplay is a lot more involved this time around. 5 songs to choose from. Shout out to Ride the Valkyries, without a shadow of a doubt one of my favorite songs of all time, as well as the Mario Sonic remixes being a very nice addition. There are 5 different elements of this event that you have to take into account: steps, spirals, spins, waves, and jumps. Already, this is a way more intuitive format of gameplay compared to 2010 and even 2012. Steps is the general arm movement when you're moving, spirals is your one-legged balance segments, spinning is exactly what you think it is. The waves are new to the party though. You gotta keep your arms within the wave the best you can, and the jumps have evolved as well. Not only do you have to lift the Wii Remote up, but you also have to spin it around to do as many spins in the air as possible. The more spins, the higher the score you get for that jump. I really enjoyed this figure skating. It feels a lot better than the previous iteration, especially because there's more to do. You gotta pay attention, and it's very satisfying to get a high score with this new format. If you remember back in Vancouver, I was not a big fan of ice hockey. Thank God they were able to make this feel playable. That's mainly because using an analog stick for this sport feels a lot better than a D-pad. But overall, this is your normal 4v4 hockey match, although this time around, you actually have an acquainted goalie instead of one of your teammates being the goalie from Vancouver. The power shots are back, but this time, once you take that shot, you have to use the touchscreen on the gamepad to take the shot. Aim for where you want the puck to go and hope Shy Guy doesn't teleport straight to it when you think you have an opening. Also, not having to rely on motion control is a big plus as well. Although moving your character around does feel pretty floaty, and it took me some time to get used to, but eventually I got the hang of it. Skeleton and Bobsleigh are the exact same concept-wise, but the gameplay for both is quite different. Skeleton brings back the speed boost path, but mechanically it's different. You have a gauge that fills up whenever you stay on this path, and you'll get a significant boost in your speed, and the screen shake goes kinda crazy, I'm not gonna lie. Also, this boost path gets smaller throughout the course, and it's very challenging to stay within the smallest path during the final third of the course. Bobsleigh, on the other hand, takes a different approach. Instead of an ongoing boost path, there are multiple smaller paths that give you a speed boost depending on how long you're on that path for. If you're there from beginning to end, you'll get the biggest boost. When playing in multiplayer, you gotta work with your team to make sure everyone is on the right track to get the best time possible. Control-wise, it's the same as Vancouver, just with the gamepad instead of the Wii Remote. But something about both of these events feels more impactful. I think it's the screen shake when you get the boost, and you can feel yourself going a lot faster than you initially were. It's a lot of fun. Time for some curling. Gotta make yourself smart somehow. This event is so much deeper than it was back in 2010. Not only using both the Wii Remote and the gamepad, but being able to strategize and give yourself a path to follow when throwing your stone. You can point out certain areas or go freestyle, and I think Nintendo absolutely regrets letting players do this. Maybe this is why the Winter Olympic Games never came back, but it's up to you whether or not you want to take the extra time to figure out what your next move is going to be. When actually curling with the Wii Remote, it's the same gameplay. Throw your stone and shake when it's time to start sweeping. But I really do enjoy screwing around during strategy time, and I'm clearly still a child. Freestyle ski cross is the exact same as it was back in Vancouver. Nothing new to talk about. Race through a snowboard course, first to finish wins. I wouldn't be surprised if this was the exact same course from back then. Our first brand new event is one of my favorites, snowboard slopestyle. We use the Wii U gamepad for control, and we have to traverse through this obstacle course and take on either rail grinding or box jumps. Depending on how you perform as well as the level level of difficulty, the higher the score. The control does take some time to get used to, mainly because moving around with your character while using the gamepad feels a lot more sensitive than it should for me. But once you get the hang of it, it's actually really exhilarating and satisfying to play. The same thing goes for the future snowboard events. Ski Jump Large Hill has gotten a gameplay makeover, and it's so much more interesting, and thank God. The big gimmick for this event is that you have to literally ride the wind while in midair. These small gusts of wind allow for more airtime, and this gives you a further flying distance. Obviously, this helps with your overall score, but the extra depth is very much appreciated. Next up is Snowboard Cross. I'll be honest, this is the exact same from Vancouver and Deca Sports. Nothing new here mechanically, although similar to slopestyle, the gamepad control takes some time to get used to. It's not unplayable, but I wouldn't be surprised if this is an event you skip. Also, Deca Sports has more course variety, but I'll talk about that on its own later. Freestyle Skiing Moguls. I'm not gonna say this is the worst Moguls gameplay because I feel like most of the control in these sports take time for me to get used to because this is my first time experiencing this game ever. Here you have to time your turns and the trick system is much more manageable this time around. You have to have the Wii Remote in a certain position and try to complete the routine before you land. This is where the majority of your points come in. I prefer this method of doing tricks than Vancouver because it was very slow and it felt like the pacing came to a complete halt. Here it doesn't feel that much slower despite the concept being similar. Now we come back to one of my favorite events in real life, Speed Skating 500 meter. The complaints are the exact same from 2010. Why isn't there a longer variation of this event and why is there no relay? Other than that, I still love this event. The gameplay is similar to its previous iteration, but there's a new add-on. You'll gain a significant speed boost for every 5 perfect swings. It's a shame that's the only new part of this sport, but what else could you add to this when the sport itself is very standard? Now it's time to face my fears and give short track speed skating another shot. I will say there's improvement here. It's not my absolute favorite, but I don't downright hate it here. It just took a lot more time than it should have for me to get used to the control. Although this time after a turn, there's a boost trail similar to the one you find while playing Skeleton. It fills up a gauge and once it gets full, you can choose when to use your special boost. But I will say this event took me the most time to get used to. Even then, after many hours of playing this game, I somehow still can't get used to this control, as well as constantly being bumped around when I'm trying to get to the front. You lose control for about a split second when you run into an opponent, but when you're all bunched up into one big group, it feels like you're stun locked and it's really annoying. Although most of the time that is a skill issue, because why would I run head first into my opponents when I can just go around? Well, if I go around, then it's a lot slower and obviously I'm trying to win. Either way, like I said, there's improvement, but not enough for me to say that I like this event. Anyway, moving on before I start shedding tears, Alpine Skiing Downhill is the exact same from the previous iteration, but this time instead of having a boost you can use whenever you want, here you'll get that special boost for every 3 flat gate boosts you obtain. I do like this event a lot more despite the same gameplay. It feels a lot faster and the boost feels so much more impactful, but again, the motion control. It's not terrible or unresponsive, but controlling your character feels way too sensitive than it should. It's kind of something I wish we could customize. Character control sensitivity. Kind of like how you can choose how sensitive your camera movement is in most games. I can't believe that's something I'm thinking about now, but it would be nice to have. I'm saying this as if we're gonna get more games in the future. Moving on, Snowboard Parallel Giant Slalom. The reason why Parallel is a part of the title is because this is a 1v1 race downhill. Your opponent is going down the same course as you, the fastest time wins, and if you miss any flag gates, that's a time penalty added to your final time. It's very quick and your average giant slalom race. Nothing too special going on here, but this next event has a lot going for it. The sport that should have been in Vancouver, the Biathlon. A top 5 favorite Winter Olympic sport, and here it's all over the place, but in a good way for me. This sport uses both the Wii Remote and the gamepad for 2 different aspects of this sport. This is a literal marathon of 2 sports in one. A cross-country ski race and shooting. God damn it, Amy has a gun again. They just can't help themselves. Use the Wii Remote to traverse through the course and use the gamepad for the shooting section. The cross-country section is very interesting. Make your way to the following shooting sections and manage your stamina. Let's dig a bit deeper. When you go uphill, use your poles to get a small speed boost. This uses up some stamina, but depending on where you're placed once you get to the next shooting section, depends on how much stamina you'll regain. This part of the game is where you have to switch to the gamepad, aim and shoot. It's just that easy. Now you would think that you have to take your time with this, but remember, this is still a race, so you gotta be as quick and accurate as possible. This is the sport I very much enjoy improving at. It is definitely my favorite of the Olympic events. Also, fun fact, those are the exact same gun designs from 2008. Honestly, I like that callback. Although there's one more, and there's a reason why I left this for last. In real life, it's cinema. Absolutely beautiful to watch. Figure skating pairs. A man and a woman do a routine together and it's amazing. I have choice words for this event, mainly out of concern. Let's get the gameplay out of the way because that is the least of our worries. It's the exact same from singles, but you actually have to hold hands with your partner, and if you're playing with other people, be prepared to never speak to each other ever again after playing this. Get drunk and high so none of you remember this. But this is a solo POV because even if I asked my friends, they wouldn't want to be in my presence ever again. The gameplay is the same, just with some pair-specific actions. Holding hands, lifting up your partner and trying not to give them a concussion, and the death spiral. Let's not talk about that, but there are a bunch of elephants that need to be addressed ASAP. I don't hate this sport, but let's be real, the character options are super limiting. This is because you have to choose one of 16 male characters and only get 4 options for the ladies. I understand the concept as to why they did this, and this may sound taboo, but how about everyone being on the map for everyone? Basically, no gender limits on who can pair up. That would make things so much funnier at the end of the day. And to think, this can get pretty cursed and funny on its own, the way it is right now. Seeing Shadow lift up Donkey Kong and somehow winning gold without a broken arm, that would be fucking hilarious. Also, this is why we need more female characters in this game. This was a great opportunity to give us Rosalina and Rouge minimum, because imagine being in a serious routine to a Sonic remix. So that's all of the Olympic events. I actually enjoyed most of these, surprisingly. The only one I will never go back to by choice is short track speed skating, but I was mainly interested in how the gamepad would come into play, and I really liked the gamepad's gameplay overall. Now we move on to the 8 dream events. I don't know how I feel about this. We had 11 back in 2010, so I really hope these live up to the hype. Also, I know the game claims that there are 9 dream events, but that's a damn lie, and I'm gonna debunk that here in a minute. First up is Groove Pipe Snowboard, a high velocity 2-lap race across Mushroom Bridge. At the beginning and near the middle of the race, everyone leaves a boost trail on this unique terrain. This is important for the final lap because you can use that to your advantage and gain extra speed. You also have different pathways you can go through, and be careful of the snowmen with green shells because they'll ruin your momentum like an actual green shell. I really like the fast pacing of this sport. It keeps me on the edge of my seat, and that alone makes it fun for me. We're headed off to Speed Highway for some roller coaster bobsleigh. The name alone has me excited, and I love a good roller coaster, so hopes are high for this event. This is a great concept, and the gameplay is very solid. There are 2 parts here, the race itself and 2D sections where you're constantly in the air and you have to angle your bobsleigh at the correct position before the next landing. It's fast-paced, exciting, beautiful visuals, and always worth coming back to every time. Now here's an event I'm very excited for, the Winter Sports Champion Race. This is a 4-sport gauntlet of skiing, speed skating, snowboarding, and bobsleigh in one huge race. There are gates that act as checkpoints that give you a random sport. There are 2 different terrains for most of the race, ice and snow. When on ice, you'll be bobsleighing and speed skating, while on snow, you'll be skiing and snowboarding. Each of these forms of transportation for this race have their own stats and properties, and the characters do as well. So you can pick a power character who's best using the bobsleigh and have to deal with the ups and downs of that respective sport. It is possible to race on the wrong terrain for whatever sport you're using, but you won't be going as fast. I think this event brings a lot of replayability, mainly because of the variety of sports and different paths to race on. Although, I'll be honest, I was expecting this to be a 4-part race with each lap being a different sport, but I really do like what we have now. Back in Vancouver, the dream curling event was bowling. This time we're at good old Green Hill Zone for some human-sized curling golf, also known as hole-in-one curling. One player pushes their teammate that's on top of the stone and they ride it down the course to take it to the house. The team with the lowest score wins. The unique courses are a lot of fun to navigate, and I wish there was something like this in real life. Now I have a gripe to pick with Figure Skating Spectacular. There's only 2 differences to both versions of this event, the setting and music. The gameplay and concept is still the same regardless, so this is 1 event instead of 2. Anyway, this is very reminiscent of Dream Figure Skating from Vancouver, but the scale is much larger and it's a free-for-all competition instead of a team event. The gameplay is the same as Figure skating singles, but we're putting on a show for the Mario and Sonic people of the world. Next up, we finally get to see Delfino Plaza in a cold setting, but technically that's not correct. Regardless, this is a very nice change of pace. Snow Day Street Hockey. With every period, we get to choose a certain street with their own unique properties. Main Street is a circular arena with certain entries on the edges of the arena, and if the puck slides in those paths, then it'll be turned into a random shell by a Pianta resident, either a red shell or a green shell. Market Street is without a doubt the biggest, alongside bounce pads for insanely cool looking shots, and the food stalls on the side will throw banana peels onto the rink, so keep your eyes peeled. I'm so sorry. Coin Street is my favorite because of the unique gameplay. The blocks are special because in order to make use of them, you have to jump on P-switches and those blocks will turn into coins. Once either team collects 8 coins, then it'll spawn a bonus goal for you to attempt. You can also use the power blocks to stun lock the opposing team and make offense much easier to manage. Speaking of bonus goals like I just mentioned, on the other 2 streets they pop up at random and is free for the taking. These give you 2 points, so it can be a good comeback mechanic if you're falling behind, but like I said, it's free for the taking for both teams, so you want to make sure that it's you who gets the bonus goal and not your opponent. Thank God hockey took a big step forward from the previous game. Speaking of big steps, Dream Snowball Fight from Vancouver is another event that took a big step forward. We now have Snowball Scrimmage. Instead of a 4v4 snowball fight, we have a 2v2 snowball siege match. The main objective is to get the golden snowflake to the respective goal to earn points. Use your snowball machine to go on the attack and deplete your opponent's health bar. Now once you get on top of the golden snowflake, you have to control it to get to your designated goal, but you can get knocked off by your opponents and vice versa if your opponent is on the ball on the way to score themselves. Also be aware of healing tiles in case you're on the verge of being knocked out. Now here's the thing, despite the fun gameplay, there is one big missing piece: free camera movement. Now I'm not so sure why this was left out. We play with the gamepad, which has 2 analog sticks. We control the character with the left analog, but I believe they didn't think about turning this into a third-person shooter, which is a shame because the only way to actively move the camera is through the auto lock feature, which works really well on its own. Also, I wish there was a bit more emphasis on the snowball fighting, but this is still a great dream event nonetheless. And keeping up with tradition, we finish off with Bullet Bill Sledge Race. Think of this as a winterfied dream equestrian from London. This is a 2-lap race across Sweet Mountain. Race your Bullet Bills through this course and collect rocket orbs to charge up a rocket boost. Your velocity goes way up, so always be on the lookout for these orbs. The more consistently you collect them, the more boost opportunities you have, barring any screw-ups like crashing. So that's all of the events. Despite the smaller number compared to the last 2 games, I truly enjoyed a lot of them. Although personally I have an issue. A lot of these events are lacking extra depth and substance. More so, some of these events should have different variations of their respective courses to choose from. This is mainly centered around the races. These, to be more specific, I'm thinking of what Deca Sports did. Not only different variations of tracks, but the added difficulties to said track to add a bit of a challenge and more depth to the gameplay. I can only imagine the replayability if each of these races had even 3 different tracks to choose from. But other than that, I was genuinely surprised with the control and how everything plays out. Obviously I have my favorites and least favorites, but nothing that feel like the bane of my existence. For me, the dream events go 8 for 8, and thankfully these just keep getting better with every entry. Now let's move on to the game modes. Now as we move forward, let's just get this out of the way. I can't play this game online because it's the 20s, and take a guess at what console I'm playing on. So that leaves us with 4 game modes to choose from. Consider me very surprised that I like every single one of these. More so the 3 outside of single match, because that's how you play events casually with nothing at stake. It's the same as always. But let's take a road off the beaten path with these next 2 modes. First up is the Action and Answer Tour. This gives me an idea of the gallery from 2008 and the quiz mini games from London Party. Except here, I believe it to be a little bit more creative than you would think. It's an in-universe game show where 4 contestants go up against each other in a set number of rounds and play for the most points. But how you get those points is very intriguing. Every round, you're set to play an event, which is the action part of this mode. But the answer part is where the creativity shines for me. It's basically in-action trivia in some way, shape, or form. From memorization to trying to hit a jackpot and so much more. It's hard to explain because as of now I haven't played everything everything yet, but hopefully things turn out for the better. I think this mode is really cool, even though it comes off as a discount London party, but in a good way. Remember circuit mode from 2008? Well, it's back and basically the same from back then. There were 8 preset medleys to choose from based on a certain theme, or you can edit your own custom medley and play through that. I love this type of game mode in any sports game with a variety of sports to choose from, and I was very surprised to see it make a return. Honestly, when I saw the word medley, for some reason I thought it was a rhythm-based game mode, and then came the realization that I'm stupid, but nothing about that is new. Anyway, time for probably the most recognizable part of this game, and my favorite mode, Legends Showdown. For me, this takes the festival from Vancouver to half a new level, and you're probably wondering, where's that other half? Well, I'll explain that here in a minute. In this mode, every single character is participating in this huge showdown. 4 characters in their own designated area with its own events to participate in, meaning there are 5 areas in total. You go up against shadow figures of yourself in events, and you get to choose between the 4 characters to participate in said event. It's a mirror match because these shadows have the same stats as your character. Whenever you get to the end of an area, you'll go up against a rival in their own event. Repeat this process until you complete all 5 areas. The final challenge is going up against Dry Bowser, Rouge, and Eggman and Word in the Winter Sports Champion race. This is a very intense, challenging, but enjoyable race. Now, I'll be honest, it is very linear and straight to the point. There's no almighty evil at the end, and it makes me question how these shadow figures are here to begin with. But regardless, I enjoy this mode, and trying to get an A+ rank in every area is very satisfying to pull off. Now, the overall game modes don't have a ton of depth, but I was shocked seeing what they brought to the table, especially Action and Answer Tour being a very pleasant surprise. Thankfully, the lack of online play does not tarnish my experience so far. I actually managed to come up with a lot more miscellaneous topics this time around, so let's get into some deeper discussion. The graphical overhaul from the Wii to Wii U feels like a fever dream in the best ways. I really like how this game looks visually, and the same goes for the character models. They give the idea of 2008's character models with 2012's vibrant colors. Also, everyone is so much more expressive in this game with their new facial expressions as well as them being more clear, and it's very charming. Staying on the path of visuals, I love this game's presentation. More so the main menu, character select screen, the pause menu with the beautiful ice design that surrounds it, and the versus screen with the characters facing off is a cool evolution of London's. Now let's go back to the character select screen real quick. This is a very small detail that doesn't really mean anything, but the charm is there for me. When you're hovering over a certain character, they'll fly into frame. But what I love about this is depending on the sport you're playing, each archetype will have their own unique pose for whatever event you're about to play. For me, it adds so much more charm to this rather stale roster. This stole my attention when I was younger, and to think I still love this small detail to this day. Keeping up the small theme of charming details, whenever you're playing with a team of 2 or 4, if you have 2 specific characters on that team and you get first place, you'll see a unique animation of them interacting. This is a really cool detail, especially with one character from both franchises interacting with each other. Okay, the train of positivity has taken a quick pit stop, so let's go over some more concerning topics. First up, they got rid of the tournament format for certain sports. Usually if you're playing an event that's presented in a tournament setting, then you would play 2 matches of said sport no matter how you place in the first match. You're either playing for gold or bronze. But in Sochi, they got rid of that feature entirely, so instead of playing 2 matches, you immediately win the first match without doing anything, and you go up against whoever wins the other side in the finals for gold. There's really no reason to showcase this to us if we can't experience it to the fullest, as well as not being able to get a chance to play for bronze. For me, it's a shame that it's not truly here, but I can understand the argument for why you would want it to go. The gameplay can get stale over time. You're playing the same sport back to back. I can understand you being tired of the same thing, but that's more of a personal preference. Another element they got rid of from 2010, there were no more team variations of sports. That's a big reason why I believe this selection of events feels off to me. If this mode were to come back, here are the events I believe should have that feature, but I can't think of a reason why it never came back. It clearly doesn't make the game better or worse, but noticeable enough to mention. Also, there's a huge missed opportunity for these events to have an optional team relay feature. Relays are fun, I can't help myself. Someone give me a valid reason as to why this game never got an opening cutscene. What we got is the definition of unacceptable. Could they not come up with anything creative, so instead just give us blue balls? I stayed on the title screen for 10 minutes, and I can confirm there is no secret opening. Not even demo gameplay. This cutscene looks like a prime teaser announcing that this game is happening. But no, we don't get a full-on opening cutscene.
cutscene. Although I like to think this is the reason why Mario Tennis Ultra Smash didn't get an opening cutscene, but at the very least, this is a pretty good game compared to that pile of shit. Thankfully, they learned from this and it never happened again, and we continue to get opening cutscenes in the future. Now, I was going to complain about the lack of new events, but the more I looked into it, we basically have every single Winter Olympic sport within both Vancouver and Sochi. The Winter Olympics have far fewer events than the Summer Olympics, so the new Olympic events we got in this game are pretty much what got left out in 2010, and so we maxed out on the quantity of events to choose from. But at least we were able to see every single unique event in some sense. Something about the character archetypes and the stats in this game is making me excited. I don't know why. If you don't know, I like talking statistics in video games, as well as general strategy. Obviously, the previous games had their own stats, but nothing was specifically shown off. Here though, we see very specific stats for every sport. Basically, each archetype other than the all-around characters excel in certain areas, just like previous games. But again, it feels more impactful and strategic here. Now, for the 4th time, you can achieve the world record with any character you want. Team composition in the team sports is fun to put some thought into if you're one to do such a thing in a 10-year-old video game. But play whoever you want and have fun. I'll judge your Waluigi pick from the nearest Chick-fil-A. Okay, there have been a lot of elephants that needed to be addressed, but here we got to the biggest one, the Wii U gamepad. Personally, I love this controller and its concept. I confess, I unironically used the TV remote feature and it was great. There's a bit of a yin and yang effect going on with how the gamepad is implemented here. There's a lot going on. You can use it to navigate menus and it's used exclusively in specific events. But one thing I find interesting about this is having to switch from one controller to another depending on the event you want to play. Unless it's the Biathlon where you get to use both the Wii remote and gamepad for their respective gameplay sections. The gamepad uses motion control most of the time and is not that bad. Granted, it took some time for me to get used to, but overall a nice change of pace. I definitely understand some critiques for the gamepad control. It's not completely unplayable nor unresponsive, but it is a process to get the hang of. I understand at the time the idea of playing figure skating with gamepad motion control would probably end the franchise, so the Wii remote makes sense for those events to be playable in their own right. Staying on topic of the gamepad, when you're not playing any event, there's a special mode you can go into, and there's a decent amount of hidden content to be found here, and that's M&S TV. Think of Mario Kart TV, except it's more involved but less memorable. This acts as a miscellaneous mode, but also a very interesting way to unlock Mii costumes, different outfits, and music. I say interesting because it's not shown to us in any way, although we do get notifications when playing normally through the news flashes. But in general, there are 5 different channels with their own features. Channel 1 is Winter Roundup, the most useless because it's used to view your friends' event records as well as your own. What's the point of looking at your own records through this mode when you can see them when you're playing? Channel 2 is definitely the most interesting channel. This shows a stat sheet of all your scores, mainly as a way to show improvement or other scores whenever you played that event. This surprisingly is pretty deep because of the very specific stats with their own numbers, and is something you never think about, but I like this channel regardless. Channel 3 is the second most useless channel as it shows rankings and times for your friends. You could even download these runs and try to beat them. Again, like I said, online play, so no need to go further into it.
Now we move on to the most rewarding channel, number 4. This is where you actually unlock everything I mentioned earlier. You take on challenges to unlock either Mii outfits, costumes, music, unique gear, and challenge points. The points themselves allow you to view hints for challenges you have yet to complete. You'll achieve a lot of these just by playing the game naturally. No more shopping, which is a shame, but the curse factor is back, but not as deep unfortunately. We'll get into that fun in a minute. The last channel is channel 5. This is useless 2.5. It only gets the half because it's not 100% reliant on the online aspect. This is where we can see our most played characters, most played events, so on and so forth, because it puts my gameplay experience into perspective and shows off my bias. The final topic that's focused on the gamepad is a very unique addition to the game that most people won't pay attention to. That's mainly because they prefer bigger screens. But whenever you're playing an event that doesn't use the gamepad, you'll get some live tips from the Mario and Sonic Sports live show on the gamepad. Toad, Chow, and 2 penguins. We couldn't get Charmy and Espio for this? They're not playable, so you might as well let them be analysts. This is just a nice detail, but try not to get distracted. There's also a very special interaction with Omochao when you set a new world record. And there's Espio, so never mind on him being on the live show. This interview is a way to communicate and show off through Miiverse, and you can even send a picture if you want. Luckily, this can be turned off so you don't have have to go through it every single time. But here's something interesting to think about. Right now, you can still send a message and take a picture, but I don't think anything will happen because no one will ever see it, whether they're playing the game or not. I wouldn't be surprised if I'm the only one playing this game as we speak. Everything I talked about surrounding the gamepad really makes me wish there was a way to capture the gamepad gameplay, because I want to show you this, but unfortunately you have to either play the game for yourself or use your imagination. Now the Mii outfit change is a lot more limiting this time around. You can only choose full-on outfits, headgear, or the full body costumes, so the hands and feet are predetermined whenever you wear a certain outfit. Just like previous games, depending on what you're wearing, your stats will get switched up, and you'll become one of the 4 archetypes. Also, welcome the 3 mascots of this year's Olympics. Big thanks to Hudson and Jen for being good sports about this, but like I said earlier, the curse factor is still here, but more limiting because you can't customize each major body part like you could in the last 2 entries. Thank God for the character costumes to save the day. I don't say this at all, but I'm not sorry for what you're looking at. The final topic I want to touch on is a very welcome addition: flexible tutorials. When you boot up the game for the first time, you clearly have never played any of these events, so the game goes on to teach you the ins and outs of every single event. But generally, it's up to you whether or not you want to play through the tutorials or just throw a Hail Mary and do your best. Even when you go back to those events, before you play, you can take a quick look at the controls in case you forgot. It's a very convenient feature to have because if you haven't played the game for a while, you can go straight into the tutorials with no issues. Now let's take a look at some general reception and critiques. Personally, I'm very shocked with the quality of this game. I was expecting to be disappointed most of the time, but honestly, I very much enjoy what this game has to offer, despite the noticeable flaws. But overall, we got mixed reviews, and all the scores I found are very similar. You'll either find above average, straight up average, or the single below average rating, and take a guess at who that was. Metacritic 55 out of 100, Destructoid 6 out of 10, GameSpot 5 out of 10, Games Radar Plus 3.5 out of 5, Polygon 6 out of 10, The Guardian 3 out of 5. I got 3 specific reviews I want to look deeper into, and honestly I was expecting them to go a bit harder on this game, but it's very tame with some fair criticism, so let's take a look. First is Nintendo Life with a 6 out of 10. First up, they say that this feels like a minor progression in the franchise, and I agree, although there's 2 ways to look at this. First is within the grand scheme of things, which is the franchise as a whole, both Summer and Winter Olympic Games. There isn't all that much that Sochi needs to improve on other than the necessities: graphics, gameplay, events, and so on. As much as I enjoyed the game modes, London Party really is its own behemoth of a game mode, and I believe it solos the 3 unique modes in Sochi. Although we get online play for the first time, which is a big step to take, but I don't think that's enough to bump it up to a major progression. The other side is within specifically the game centered around the Winter Olympics. Now that's a completely different story. This is where I believe the major progression is at, in context of strictly the Winter Olympic Games, more so only Vancouver. Thankfully, I believe this game has progressed past Vancouver in every way. I think the events are a lot better to control, the game modes are great, and I believe Legend Showdown is an evolved festival. Regardless, there is progression here, but not enough to where it feels like a breakthrough in the franchise. Nintendo Life's next point is they believe Sochi is ignoring the rapid-fire party experience of 2012. I definitely disagree with this. The party experience in this game is the exact same from 2012 and 2010, but I believe they're talking about London Party versus all 3 Sochi game modes combined. Again, I disagree with. Completely ignoring feels like a reach. Now, I agree that London Party is a better game mode overall because there's a lot of depth and replay value, but let's not say that the other game modes aren't trying to give us something unique and fun to play. Another critique was for the online being limiting, but I can't really express my opinions because I can't play online. But if I had to guess, it's the exact same as local multiplayer, but you're playing with people from all over the world. They also mentioned the TV feature being pretty inventive, but it wasn't taken far enough, which is a fair critique. But there's a theme going on with most Wii U games. The gamepad doesn't live up to its potential fully. Nintendo Life sees this game as a good time overall, but very similar to the grand scheme of things, which is fair. Digital Spy is up next with the 3 out of 5. Positives on visuals, multiplayer, and the family-friendly fun that you'd expect from Nintendo, although they commented commented on the lack of spark and progression in the series. I just talked about this, so there's no need to repeat myself, but with this they quoted, "When the action is go and games are in full swing, the game is a flashy and fun minigame compilation for all the family. Despite some enjoyable multiplayer encounters, the game is lacking the sublime to go with the star power." Now, what is the word sublime supposed to represent in this scenario? I have no clue, but if we're still talking about the lack of spark, then sure, you can have that. Finally, the inevitable IGN, 4.5 out of 10. Here is where we get the unresponsive motion control critique, and that feels like an incredible reach, but it is very characteristic of IGN. Sometimes I wonder if they play the same game that us common folk play. No more time will be wasted on them. I'll be honest, this game was a very pleasant surprise. There is a lot I enjoyed, although some of the critiques that we just went over are very valid. Mainly the fact that London was such a strong entry. I think it's safe to assume that people were hoping for a similar product in the winter setting, and I think that's fair. I can understand disappointment, but this is still a very quality game. I want to say this series took a small dip with this game, but luckily it's not in hell. There could have been a lot more to bring us back to 2012 in some way. At least there's hope for redemption with 2016. The new era of Mario and Sonic is here, but that's a story for another time. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm gonna go cry until we see Mario and Sonic in the Winter Olympics again.